So thank you, Pia, for that generous introduction to both Sharad and I. Just a small correction. I've actually been teaching since 2001. We joined together. I didn't want to bring on my own biography here, but let's begin with what Vishnu Priya alluded to, which is the intellectual protest against the withdrawal of an award given to Anagha Lele for the translation of Kobat Gandhi's prison memoirs, because I think this gesture of solidarity towards a fellow intellectual is an important gesture. So, can we begin with that?
Good morning. Thank you very much. Am I audible? Okay, so technology part is now done. Let me try to be intelligible, for which we need social sciences. Actually, as we would discuss in the course of this interview, that this book is a product of these circumstances, that the crisis that we are going through. So it's a book. There are various causes. I can talk about the causes of the book that I know that led me to write this book and how I wrote it, rather than getting into the details of this book, because it is the reader's right and it is reader's sovereignty to decide what is written in it. So due to this book, actually, I have traveled across the state of Maharashtra, and in 1.5 years, I have done 65 programs everywhere. So that kind of thing and the responsibility that I see as somebody who is invited everywhere in Maharashtra, and when I learn, because I'm in JNU, and this thing happened, that the government of Maharashtra cancelled the already declared award, and the process by which they cancelled, in my letter that went pretty viral, I said that in some countries there is some degree of substantive democracy. There is no absolute democracy, because absolute democracy doesn't exist, will not exist, but one has to posit it. In some countries, democratic countries, there is some degree of substantive democracy. In some countries, at least they pretend to be democratic. But in Maharashtra, the way this award was cancelled, they didn't find it necessary to pretend to be democratic. Like with simple one GR, because somebody wrote a letter, कोई बुद्धि विरोधी व्यक्ति, बुद्धि विरोधी संगठन का था, उसने पत्र लिखा, और उसके आधार पे उन्होंने दिया हुआ जो अवार्ड है कैंसिल कर दिया. So it's like kind of, it's not just about that book. I had not read that book by that time. It is not about the nature of the book. That is secondary aspect. Even if you want to cancel the award, at least have some democratic process. The process by which it was given, there was no, the people of Maharashtra were not taken into confidence, nothing. Then I took a decision that I should return my award, because it's the disrespect and humiliation of all those who are engaged in intellectual, literary, artistic activities. And this is very symptomatic of our times. So for this reason, I cancelled that award. And actually, in Maharashtra, people appreciated it. I did it because for my conscience. Because many people thought that there was a backlash, there would be trolling, then I was equated with urban Naxals. क्योंकि मैं जब महाराष्ट्र में घूमता हूँ, हर प्रोग्राम में कभी सिविल सोसाइटी होते, कभी स्टूडेंट होते हैं, आप मेरे सामने क्यों नहीं सब चीजें पूछते जो जेएनयू के बारे में टुकड़े टुकड़े गैंग, अर्बन नक्सल, पीछे ट्रोलिंग करना है, कौन सी तुम्हारा, दिस इज cowardice. I said to be regressive, it takes no courage. Or to be progressive, it takes intellectual efforts. It takes intellectual efforts, courage, and some noble idea of human nature. And to be regressive, it doesn't take any courage. It takes cowardice, and it takes intellectual laziness and collapse of any ethics, if there is any. So I said, जब मैं जाता हूँ महाराष्ट्र तो मुझे सवाल पूछो ना भाई, मैं कौन सा भागे जा रहा हूँ. तो अभी 60-65 प्रोग्राम्स महाराष्ट्र में कोई नहीं सवाल पूछता है. मैं खुद पूछता भाई पूछो. जब तक आप भी पूछेंगे तब तक मजा कैसे आएगा? नहीं पूछते. So that's the condition.
So that brings me to my next question, which is the way this book actually began. Because we, as all of you all know here, you're new to this university, some of you have just come in, that JNU was under relentless attack for several years that culminated in a spate of unimaginable violence. And all of us were affected by it as teachers and students. All of you saw it on your television screens. And that led you to speak about the university and the context in which you had actually worked here and what had transpired here through a Facebook post. This really was a trigger for this whole book. And then that book took on a kind of an organic form. But what's also interesting is that this Facebook post was in your mother tongue because you wanted to speak to a constituency that was back home and was familiar with a certain kind of you, and now suddenly they were seeing you through a different kind of a filter, which is the filter of the television screen and the trolling agents. So can you tell us a little bit about how this began?
The context of this book is rather complex. That is why reading the book one understands. But like basic context is that my mother tongue is not Marathi. My mother tongue is like yours, Malbani, one of those many languages that do not find a place in our constitution. So like, and I'm coming from that North Maharashtra, Dhulia के पास छोटा सा गाँव है, 1,000-1,200 population है, जहाँ पे नाम मात्र पढ़ाई होती है. Is it alright if I speak in English, Hindi?
Yes, absolutely.
हाँ, तो वहाँ पे अहिरानी बोली जाती है जो मेरी मदर टंग है, और वहाँ पे गांव में कोई मराठी नहीं बोलता है, और स्कूलिंग जो प्राइमरी स्कूलिंग हमारी नाम मात्र, मतलब वहाँ पे टीचर भी सेमी मराठी या अहिरानी बोल लेते हैं. तो so the kind of language that we speak at home, linguistic capital, cultural capital that we have at home, when we kind of leave our village, we have to abandon that linguistic capital and cultural capital, and we have to learn a new language when we reach higher education. So when I left my village, like in 95, the book starts in 95 when I flunked in my 10th. 10वीं में बहुत सारे हमारे सब स्टूडेंट फेल हो जाते हैं, मैं भी फेल हो गया क्योंकि उस साल वो स्क्वाड आ गया और हम नकल नहीं कर पाए, सब फेल हो गए. तो मतलब ये सब गांव की, इंडिया में सभी रूरल स्पेसेस की कहानी है. तो जिस साल मेरे 10वीं का एग्जाम था, उस साल अंग्रेजी के पेपर के दौरान स्क्वाड बैठा रहा 3 घंटे, हम कुछ लिख नहीं पाए, फिर मुझे 18 मार्क मिल गए, मुझे पता नहीं कैसे मिल गए. तो फिर 95 to 99 तो मेरा जो एजुकेशन वो हाईवेज है, मतलब मैं कभी गैराज में काम करता था, कभी टैक्सी चलाता था, कभी ये बहुत सारे ऐसे काम किए. फिर 99 में हमारे महाराष्ट्र में कहते कि बाहरून परीक्षा देने, मतलब आप कॉलेज में जाओ, बाहर से एग्जाम दे सकते हैं आप. देन दैट इज द बिगिनिंग ऑफ माई एक्चुअली formal education, 99. And then I had to abandon my language, mother tongue, and also the language that I had somehow acquired during my schooling, that is Marathi language. और अंग्रेजी सीखनी पड़ी, उसके बिना नौकरी नहीं दिखाई दे रही थी. Still I was 99, you know English. मतलब ही नहीं क्या, मतलब ये अंग्रेजी भी आती तो 10वीं फेल ना होता मैं. Alright, no, the language you speak at home, you find the continuity of that cultural and linguistic capital in the institutions, in higher education. So you are not strong, you are privileged. There's a difference. So we come from that background. And these kind of things, I'm a little bit blunt, and right now I will say there are certain things I might say and I take the full responsibility of it, because when I will talk about the immediate trigger of the book was the technocrat, who ruined this university, and who I happened to be in the executive council, and I saw him from close quarters. I was trying to see if there is any human content to him. I was trying to see if there is any anthropological content to him, but all I saw is zoological matter. He was so dehumanized to the core. 1 घंटा तक हम हाथ ऊपर करते थे, लेकिन हमें बोलने का मौका नहीं दिया जाता. Like explicit humiliation of the elected representatives in the executive council. Moshmi, Sachidanand, हम बैठे हैं, कभी कभार Moshmi had that, I don't know how she could manage, she could speak. But मुझे तो faggot पे बिठाया जाता है. पहले तो मतलब हम तो कास्ट, क्लास, जेंडर वगैरह, पर एजिज्म भी बहुत बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है हिंदुस्तान में. मैं मतलब कम उम्र होना मतलब ऑलरेडी कुछ प्रॉब्लम है. So, ये तो gerontocracy के प्रॉब्लम मैं फेस करता हूँ क्योंकि मैं 44 exactly today is my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday!
Thank you. तो मतलब then I used to kind of, for 1 hour, I used to raise my hand. I was not given the chance to speak. It's the hatred of democracy, hatred of reason. These people, then I told, one gentleman who is also a senior professor in history, I told him, मैंने कहा तुम यहाँ पे बोलने नहीं देंगे लेकिन महाराष्ट्र में के गांव-गांव में जाकर बोलूँगा, वहाँ पे रोके दिखा. और अभी रोक नहीं पा रहे. तो I decided, and then this is a product of my anger. मैं रात में जाकर आईरानी में लिखता था.
Right.
And it used to go viral. और उसी में एक पोस्ट लिखा जो one memory that I wrote 1.5 page, and then publishers started calling me that can you write the series of this. So initially some kind of dilettante publishers were approaching me, and then when Lokwan में गृह जो हमारे People's Publishing House का मराठी organ है, so they said we want to publish it. मैंने कहा कॉमरेड पब्लिश करने जा रहे हैं मतलब कुछ अच्छा ही लिखा होगा. तो देखो हम क्रिटिसाइज करते हैं, मतलब जैन इज नॉट दैट होमोजेनस monolithic. My friends know sometimes how brutal I am. It is not that kind of some mono. It's so heterogeneous. It's so, but we know that we belong to the same paradigm of progressive politics.
Right.
And we are differentially situated. We have our differences. We critique each other, but we reject the divine, supreme divine leader to North Korea का भी यहाँ से चला गया. We reject them because they have hatred for logic, they have hatred for education, they have hatred for the very idea of democracy.
Yeah, but one of the figures that you really valorize is your mother, who spoke in Ahirani, was not very educated, had studied only till the 5th. But you have repeatedly through the book talked about the kind of grassroots intelligence that she had. And she became, in one sense, your sounding board and has been your sounding board throughout your life, somebody you speak to in Ahirani. And what's interesting is right at the beginning of the book, you also talk about a moment of food transgression, if I may put it that way, where you say that you have failed your exam 10th, you haven't been able to pass your English exam, your mother tells you to cheer up, and you ask her to prepare egg, which you were a vegetarian till then. So I think this moment of transgression expressed through food, and then your desire to acquire mastery over English. Can we, in some sense, see that as a way of entering into a new world and a new world of knowledge? Because you also talk about how before that you were very superstitious, and now suddenly you're thinking very differently, and then you go to Jodte and you enter the college, the Jai Hind College. You've also talked about how an educational opportunity or an infrastructure for university helps you develop as a person and as a thinker.
Yeah. See, here interacting with this frighteningly intelligent audience is easy actually. They're already in good faith. And even if I deploy a good amount of ratio, reason, it's sufficient. But then when we interact there, it's very, very heterogeneous, contradictory. There, along with ratio, one has to use oratio, with a bit of political expedience, rhetoric and all that. So, but actually that's what my background was, because I didn't have that right from the beginning, that formal conditioning and training into the jargon. So I was like anybody who is has become bhakt, मैं भी भक्ति था. मतलब मैंने भी 3 साल आरएसएस को दिए, ऐसी थोड़ी है. ठीक है. तो और मैं गांव में जो हमारे यहाँ पे स्वाध्याय नाम का एक होता है, बाबा होते बहुत सारे, तुम्हाला तर माहितीच आहे स्वाध्याय वगैरे. हां, बैठका चालतात. सो
आसारामचं नाव घेतलंय तुम्ही.
आसाराम पांडुर. हां, तो मैं गांव में मैं उसमें फ्रंट लाइन में बैठने वाला उतना धार्मिक था. तो फिर मैं बिल्कुल भगवान में वगैरह विश्वास वगैरह, तो मुझे लगता था 10 में तो फेल ही नहीं होना चाहिए था. और इतना पुण्य करने के बावजूद भी 10वीं में फेल हो गया मैं। तो फिर वो दिन मेरा काफ़ी बुरा गया। तो फिर गुस्सा था, माँ बोले अरे खा तो ले भाई। मराठी आयरानी में उसका जो पॉपुलर विजडम कहा कि एक साल में भगवान बूढ़ा नहीं होता, अगले साल फिर मेला भरेगा और फिर एग्जाम दे देना। तो फिर मैंने कहा ऐसा कर, अब है ना अंडा भुर्जी बना दे मुझे। तब तक मैं स्ट्रिक्ट वेजिटेरियन था। मैंने कहा आई हैव टू inflict some kind of revenge on those gods. तब से that is transgression. And when I came to JNU, there is a kind of series of transgressions I would call, and like this inside outside this thing. There are many insides and many outsides, and there are many entries, and every entry is guarded by Maxwell's demon. If you do not have that requisite charge, you are thrown out. So you have to dodge, you have to, and that's how I have reached this place. And that's what as Anna Arendt says, that the notion of freedom has this dual dimension. One is its objective dimension, that's liberty, and this subjective dimension that is like something integral to human nature. And everybody has that aspiration for freedom. But if there is no objective condition, like liberating condition, that aspiration, freedom will be frustrated. And then you will live that alienated existence. So, it's not that the notion of freedom is something very unique to the Western culture. It is kind of integral, intrinsic quality of human nature. But our society does not offer those objective conditions where we can liberate ourselves. We can express our freedom. So, because why this book is commented upon by most of the stalwarts in Maharashtra, because it's not just about that rags to riches trajectory. Had it been that, I wouldn't have bothered to write. So it's like analyzing what it means to witness education-driven social mobility in a country like ours, where there are deep inequalities. And sometimes we try to conceal some fancy words, mosaic. I'm not critiquing this one, but like diversity and all that. But actually there are inequalities, and most of us, we have that verticality to we have to go that vertical movement, and some people have, very few have that horizontal. So that difference is there. So I happen to get some opportunities because Jain College, which is a very good college in that region. Infrastructure was excellent, the principal was excellent, he was visionary. After that, I benefited from IFLU's infrastructure. But then I came to JNU, it was an entirely different environment. Right. And these liberating conditions allowed me to express my freedom. In the absence of these liberating conditions, if you are free to do, it's meaningless. The notion of freedom is to be implemented with a set of institutions, and those institutions are under attack today. Yeah. Freedom just, oh, you are free, doesn't mean anything. You are free doesn't mean anything, because in order to actualize your freedom, you need to have those liberating objective conditions, and a society like ours is deeply liberty-side, kills the notion of liberty at every step. Right. And it's not very liberating. So the project like JNU and most of these, at least institutions on paper, are liberating. So I'll just give a small example that will contrast JNU to IFLU, because one of my masters, the first master is from IFLU. At that time it was CIAFL. So right now I teach French literature and philosophy in JNU, but like my graduation is in English literature, first post-graduation is in English literature and cultural studies. But then how I ended up being a teacher of French literature and philosophy here, there's a story to it, and that will allow us to understand the difference between JNU and the rest of the institutions.
Right. So this is the Lucknow.
Lucknow.
Right, because you've spoken, in fact, what's interesting about the book is that it's also populated with characters who have helped you in your journey and have been friends and mentors and partners, co-partners in this journey. So in FLU, where you've talked about this kind of a commercialized environment of education, and I'd also like to tell you that this book emerged against the backdrop of students agitating for cheap education, because if you remember, there was this huge, agitation in JNU, and that is a very telling story, because You talked about the commercialization of education and how you were humiliated because you wanted to study French, because you wanted to read French philosophy in French, right? So,
Yeah, so when I joined CIEFL, that is now IFLU, so there used to be evening courses, French for French, and I think Ajit Khanna, if he's here, he was teaching there in IFLU. So I inquired about the courses for the French language, and they said that it would cost some 2 to 3,000 rupees. I said I don't have that money. Then I was a bit disappointed. I came back, and then Ajit was also on the campus. So I asked him, "Is it possible I just sit there and I don't need any degree, or I just want to sit there?" And he said, "No problem. I mean, there are empty chairs, and you can sit in one of those chairs." So no problem. And even initially the director was also kind of, understanding. So 2 or 3 sessions I attended there. And somebody from the administration complained that I am committing a huge illegality of attending those classes without paying. Then I was summoned, humiliated, and was asked to write an apology letter. I wrote it, and I found that there is something terribly wrong there. Those rules that, people who try to govern the society with rules, that like Dr. Baviskar Ambedkar writes in the Buddha and his Dhamma, that rules, either you break them or they break you. So there are kind of set of people who are above the rules, and the overwhelming part of our society are below the rules. The rules are used to crush them. And they simply use this rule to deprive me of that, infrastructure. That was technical government infrastructure. Then I got angry and I decided I will learn this language on my own. So Ajit Khanna helped me, because on his card I could issue as many books as I want, cassettes. It was the kind of era of cassettes. I used to borrow those cassettes, and I studied the material that is to be studied for 4 years in 1.5 years, and I started reading French philosophy in French. And I didn't have any formal degree. But when I came to JNU was not governed by those rigid rules. JNU was governed by set of principles, because principles give you that latitude. That latitude is, every case is a unique case, and there is a flexibility, and here faculty is used to evaluate every situation, and accordingly if somebody wants to work, somebody wants to, there are some issues. So, and this man who just demolished to a great extent the JNU was governed by the notion of those rules, that infallible rules, that manuwadi मानसिकता. एंड दिस जो रूल्स वाले होते हैं ना, मनुवादी है, उनको बोलना पड़ता है ब्राह्मणिकल है, और इस शब्द से आप नफरत मत करो, ठीक है? हम बहुत बोलते हैं कि रेमेडी करना, ये करना है, जब डायग्नोसिस नहीं होगा तो काय का रेमेडी करेंगे आप? आपको डायग्नोसिस ही नहीं करना है. So in this book there is a critique of that this we are here to provide remedial classes. No, but you have to do that diagnosis. I see many stalwarts in this campus, but those stalwarts, some of them or most of them, have something that they have contributed. But huge part of that is to those shoulders on which they are standing, and standing tall. So everybody is not stalwart, because some people, many of them, have to do what 10 generations have done. So it's not the competition is unfair. So JNU was in that regard. Partly, of course, we also kind of serve the purpose of token. I agree with Harish that yesterday when he said that this paternalistic, that weaker section, and we are there, this philanthropic. I agree with him. So that one has to learn that justice means adjustment for a side ho jao. On my behalf, don't speak. तो ये वाली बात है, ये जब तक नहीं समझ में आएगा, because right now we are all on the same page, because we know the enemy, but there are some fault lines, and it can lead to antagonisms, and we belong to very different points of departure, and points of departure are not in our hands. Somebody is born in that caste, in that body, in that region, but point of arrival is in our hand. So that understanding about point of arrival, if we have that, I think we can work around these points of departure. But if we are in bad faith that just tactical alliance, ये tactical alliance ने बहुत नुकसान किया हिंदुस्तान का. जो tactical alliance वाली जो language में यहाँ पे 18 साल से सुन रहा है. If we are here and if we are with you, we are not for you, we are for some cause. This is the kind of line I'm quoting from Caligula, Albert Camus. Just because we are with you, don't take us for granted. We are not for you, we are for the cause. And we know because I happen to criticize some of our friends in the GBM. बाहर निकलते ही मुझे हमारे राइट विंग दोस्त ने पकड़ लिया, चलो जी आप तो बहुत उनको तो ब्लास्ट कर दिया। मैंने कहा ये तो खुश हो रहा है और ऊपर से मैं ओबीसी, मतलब आशा बढ़ जाती है। तो मैंने कहा भाई उनको क्रिटिक करता हूँ, तुम्हें रिजेक्ट करता हूँ, फर्क है।
Well put. So now that brings me to, you've already spoken about Lucknow, but in JNU you've also spoken about how the environment here ensured that you could actually pace your education in many ways. You took up a job at the French Culture Center. That opened up doorways for you because you had to support yourself economically right through your education. It was never easy for you. So what did that shift or that encounter with the French Culture Center and the kind of intellectual environment it provided do to you? And then, of course, the Erasmus Mundus scholarship that you got. Because that marks a shift, again, in your intellectual environment, and also just the fact that you now see yourself as a kind of a cosmopolitan intellectual. That's also a term that you've used in translation in Marathi, but tell us about this.
Because 100 odd pages are about JNU. Like JNU, I experienced as a student when I came here in 2004-5, and JNU when I joined as a teacher, and JNU post 2016. What happened to JNU, and from that, inside take on JNU, and what makes JNU JNU. Actually, they know. Here, students select us. The sense, students, here it's like JNUs, they are the reason of being of JNU. And they have made this program actually such a huge success. Because when you go outside this campus, we have to look for the audience of our kind. They are actually student selectors. So JNU has played that, definitely JNU has been that decisive moment in my life. When I came to JNU, till that point I didn't come to Delhi for JNU, I came to Delhi to work in the French embassy. I had no degree in French, no formal education in French. And then a friend of mine, Samuel Judte, he said that there is a university called JNU where you don't have to have any prior degree in order to do your masters in any discipline provided you succeed in the entrance exam. मैंने कहा ऐसी भी यूनिवर्सिटी होती है, तब तक मुझे पता भी नहीं था. मतलब it is, I'm talking 2004, and then I appeared for the entrance exam and I joined here, but then I had to work in the embassy, so the center was quite lenient about me. They knew that he's working in the French embassy, वहाँ पे तो ठीक-ठाक ही French बोलते होंगे. So मैं 8:30 बजे चंद्रभागा में रहता था, 8:30 बजे 615 पकड़ता था और दिन भर काम करता था, 7:30 बजे मैं कैंपस पे आता. तो मुझे ये जो JNU का जो कल्चर है, वो लाइफ है, I have not actually experienced that much. तो मुझे उतना वो ऑब्सेशन भी नहीं रहा है. मतलब मैं एक्चुअली मुझे इरिटेटिंग लगता था ये JNU का जो एक्सेप्शनलिज्म है, या फिर लगता है कि मतलब मुझे कभी-कभी JNU वाले शाहजहां लगते थे. मतलब वो मेरा क्रिटिक था कि यार मतलब एक ताजमहल है ना, उसका रेप्लिका बननी नहीं चाहिए. जो बनाएगा उसके हाथ काट देंगे. लेकिन इतने खुश थे ये. तो मैं मतलब मुझे JNU बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट लगा, डिसाइसिव लगा, लेकिन ऑब्जेक्ट ऑफ ऑब्सेशन कभी नहीं लगा. तो इसलिए मुझे थोड़ा सा मैं सटायर भी किया है किताब में कि जैसे मैं आया था तो मतलब जिस तरह के आई एम नॉट क्रिटिसाइजिंग बिकॉज इफ स्टूडेंट्स आर स्टडिंग हियर with what 250 rupees per semester, it is because of this student unions and all that, and one has to recognize its relevance. But at the same time, we know that we are progressive, but at the same time we know that progressive politics or logic is also instrumentalized, and I have a good number of examples that instrumentalization of progressive thought and progressive politics that is worse than being regressive. At least उनमें मतलब हिम्मत तो है, चल हम है ऐसे ही है, लेकिन ये जो regressive होकर progressive का instrumentalization है, that one has to learn to identify and detect it. And actually My training in political philosophy and proper philosophy, it gave me that insight. So मैंने कहा देखो, because it's when we are in good faith, when we are in bad faith, we know that something gender is at work, but then we use caste category. We know that language is at work, then we use gender category. When we are in bad faith, because as yesterday we understood, there are systems and subsystems of injustice, and there are many factors, many categories on which this injustice takes place. But then यहाँ पे मतलब like language is a huge factor. आपको बोलना नहीं आता है, so people are muted. We do not realize that how hostile we come across, and we don't, because that we are so much into navel gazing that we do not know what the other things. We are so much into our own perception, and what is that objective perception? How it is perceived outside this campus. For that, one has to become organic. And that's where I think somewhere in last 20 years, if not the founding pillars of JNU, but last 20, 30 years, JNU has failed, in my eyes. Because when I go to villages and all that, there is a critic, and let us see if there is any substance to it, that JNU people practice what we call, in literary theories, mall roads point of view. Mall road point of view, जो मसूरी, शिमला, hill station पे mall road होता है, and this high-fi British officers used to be stationed there, but never they descend the plains. But these subaltern classes would give them data, and they would write something theoretical about it, and एक आँख उनकी लंदन, पेरिस, बर्कली की तरफ ही रहेगी. So, and they were disconnected. So their audience is like people did ask me कि आप इंग्लिश में लिख सकते थे इस किताब को, ग्लोबल मार्केट मिलता. मैंने यही तो गड़बड़ कर गए हम लोग. ग्लोबल मार्केट, यहाँ का पूरा पॉलिटिकल एक्सेस लेगा, उसमें ग्लोबल मार्केट की पड़ी है.
So let's look at what you've used, the term JNU exceptionalism, and the belief that we are somehow in a position where if we say something or we are attacked, lots of people from around the world speak up on behalf of JNU. When some such thing unfolds in a smaller university or even another university in Delhi, such as it happened in Jamia Millia Islamia, and you've been very critical of the fact that people speak up when it's JNU but don't necessarily speak up when it's another university like Jamia. When they are subjected to violence, when they're subjected to all kinds of infiltrations into their intellectual life, there's a failure to speak up. So would you like to say something about it?
Yeah, I mean, it is something like, reflective of our social biases. If something happens, like, that I have said that, जब JNU में कुछ होता है, मतलब JNU को कम से कम उसका रोना तो दिखाई देता है ना दुनिया को, लेकिन बाकी जगह पे रोना क्या, उनका मतलब कत्ल हो रहा है, किसी की नज़र में भी नहीं आता है. ये जो है, तो in that sense, I find JNU privileged. मतलब जैसे कि मैंने जो आप कुछ लोगों को पता होगा, 6 महीने पहले मेरे साथ ही कांड हो गया था ना, मेरा अपहरण कर लिया गया था. तो अब yesterday only the सचिव नारायण called me. मैंने कहा 4-5 महीने तुम्हें याद नहीं, अभी कल एग्जाम में मुझे फिर हॉल्ट करना है तुम लोगों को. नहीं सर, वो SBI के स्टेटमेंट दे दीजिएगा, अभी हमें चार्जशीट फाइल करनी है. But if you see, I was kidnapped, taken to unknown location and all that. Then somehow I managed to kind of, or some kind of stroke of luck that I survived. And after that, a massive response and massive support and solidarity, and 3 days people were arrested. In 24 hours, FIR was lodged. It is because I come from a particular caste. यदि मेरी जगह पे कोई और कास्ट होती या कोई रिलीजन होता तो उसकी FIR तक नहीं लॉन्च होती. मैं आपको बताता हूँ. ये हुआ क्योंकि एक मैसिव सपोर्ट मुझे महाराष्ट्र से मिला, और सीधा ऊपर से भी सिस्टम में बैठे हुए लोग लगे तो अपनी जात का ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है. ये जो है, तो उसमें एक्चुअली आई एम प्रिविलेज्ड. एंड मुझे लगता है कि बार बार ऐसे दाढ़ी खींचते खींचते उसमें उनको लगा कि मैं कोई मुस्लिम होगा, क्योंकि दैट वाज द फर्स्ट. वो वीडियो बनाया, मुझे गांधी जी बनाकर बैठा था ना उन्होंने, और वीडियो बना रहे थे. मैंने कहा मेरा नाम शरद बाविस्कर है, झूठ बोल रहा है बोले. और मैंने कहा तुम्हारे पास मेरा पर्स है, देख लो भाई. अरे तू शरद बाविस्कर निकला है तो मुल्ला भी निकला. Then actually we laugh at it, but it is something sick about our society. And actually I got a response from Maharashtra and everywhere, and Delhi police commissioner से monitoring हो रहा था, and all this support, I think not because of what I am by my own achievement or work, because the caste I was born in. So this is something that very difficult to undo, but one has to undo it. One has to recognize one's privileges and see how we can actually create a relatively just order. I mean, there is no absolute order, but just order, and that's what actually I recognize. And this is actually, you can see, take examples. कुछ कोई अरेस्ट होता है तो पूरा बवाल हो जाता है, कोई सड़ता है तो जेल में कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. तो ये जो हो रहा है ये ऐसा ही है. जेएनयू पे हमला होता है तो सॉलिडारिटी, प्रोटेस्ट, इवन डर जाते हैं जो हमारे नागपुर में मित्र बैठे हैं. नहीं मैं बता रहा हूँ, मैं महाराष्ट्र के अभी छोटे गांव से लेकर बड़े शहर में प्रोग्राम कर रहा हूँ, जो मेरी प्रायोरिटी समझता हूँ मैं. तो JNU has emerged as that actually bulwark. Okay, I mean we have our privileges, but then we are also trying to work up to that expectation. That is also there. One has to give that credit to JNU. And उनको JNU का खौफ है, ऐसा नहीं कि नहीं है. तो लेकिन वो combine करना पड़ेगा. JNU as kind of it stands for reason, and उसके साथ what we call ratio and oratio, उसके साथ हमें organic जाना पड़ेगा. हमारी constituency क्या है? How can we intervene there rather than hijacking somebody's constituency? Yes, I am universal at some stage. I do believe in वैश्विकता and all that, but somewhere we are also देशी. वो जो देशी है, हमारी जो languages है, उसके बारे में थोड़ा किस्सा बताओ. लैंग्वेज के बारे में नहीं बताओ. वो ऐसा है कि actually I have written this book in a kind of Marathi which is slightly, not slightly, removed from the standard Marathi, जिसको महाराष्ट्र में पेठी मराठी कहते हैं. ठीक है, प्रमाण भाषा. और उसमें मेरी मदर टंग का यूसेज जहाँ जहाँ मेरी मदर बोल रही वो ऐसे के ऐसे रखा है मैंने. आयरानी. लखनऊ में तो हिंदी का यूज किया है, फ्रांस में तो फ्रेंच सेंटेंसेस है, इटली में हूँ तो मैं इटालियन शब्द है, ऐसे मैंने ऐसे बिल्कुल वो मोजाइक बना दिया है. तो मैंने मैन्युस्क्रिप्ट भेजा तो they said it will take some time because our proofreader is going through it. And then after 2 months I got the manuscript. I just couldn't recognize that it was my manuscript. उनको ऐसा लगा कि मैंने गलत मराठी में लिखी. इटालियन, क्या आपके घर में ये सब लैंग्वेज बोली जाती है? This is attitudinal problem. मैंने कहा you are ready to do efforts for French, German, Italian, लेकिन आयरानी तुम्हारे बिल्कुल बगल में रहते, तुम्हें शर्म आती है पूछने के लिए इसका मतलब क्या होता है. ये जो है ना, लैंग्वेज, डायलेक्ट, सोशल लिंग्विस्टिक का कॉम्पिटेंस नहीं है, फिर भी कैसे कैटेगरी, हाउ इट इज इंस्ट्रूमेंटलाइज्ड टू डिप्राइव पीपल. सो दिस इज एन एग्जांपल. आई सेड ये किसी का अनुवाद नहीं हुआ, नाउ इट इज बीइंग रेड एवरीवेयर इन महाराष्ट्र.
Yeah, there are lots of questions, but I did have maybe a quick question about your time in France, and there are many things that we could have actually touched upon, but maybe we are running out of time, so we take the questions from the floor. So the first question is it's about, so I'm just going to kind of shorten this. The question is about SC, ST and OBC students and the difficulty that they have in PhD vivas, and also the fact that if you look at all the colleges in Delhi University, there is absolutely no representation at the top level. The principals, there are no principals from SC, ST backgrounds, right? So what is the reason you think for this kind of discriminatory practice, and what can be done about it?
Actually, the reason everybody knows and we don't want to know, that is caste. Caste is a huge reality. And for example, I'll give some examples. In my book, I'm very frank. Once it comes in Hindi, इसको थोड़ा सा कैंपस में थोड़ा सा तो प्रॉब्लम होगा कुछ लोगों को, because when I finished my undergrad in my town Jodte, after that even in IFLU I didn't attend classes, because मेरा मानना है कि it is critic of my own fraternity, that is teaching community, कि 10 में से 2-3 ही लोग मेहनत करके पढ़ाते हैं जिनका क्लास अटेंड करने का मन करता है छात्रों का. बाकी जो 7 लोग हैं उनको यदि पूछा जाए कि भाई व्हाट इज द लास्ट टेक्स्ट दैट यू रेड विथ गुड अमाउंट ऑफ कंसंट्रेशन, वो अपॉइंटमेंट लेटर होता है उनका. But I think my strategy was not to attend those classes at all. तो मेरा इफ्लू का ट्रांसक्रिप्ट देखेंगे तो मुझे A1 C-C-C-. तो मतलब एक इसमें A मैं कुछ भी लिखूं मुझे C- ही मिलेगा. और JNU में भी होता है. JNU में भी होता है. लेकिन आपको मुझे पता है कि हम कैसे इवैल्यूएट करते हैं. आई एम सिटिंग ऑन द अदर साइड ऑफ द टेबल. मुझे सब पता है और मैंने उसके बारे में लिखा भी है. हमारे मतलब जो कल बात की कि व्हाट अबाउट क्वालिटी एजुकेशन. क्वालिटी एजुकेशन इज समथिंग वेरीफाइड, न्यूट्रल, वैल्यू न्यूट्रल, हवा वाली चीज है. नहीं, वो दैट इज अ पॉलिटिकल थिंग. मतलब पीपल आर नॉट गुड एट achieving quality education. So one has to and the notion of merit. I have written bluntly in my book that in the name of merit, casteist practices I have seen and have denounced them in public forums. I have seen, and people are kind of, I understand, but we have to think about merit. मैं कह रहा merit करके तो क्या? Because I have seen that. मैं तो if I am here, I say with absolute pride that because of Mandal Commission I am here. Because I have faced this. I have not faced the discrimination that SC/ST people face, but I have faced very subtle forms of discrimination. And I do have 5 masters. I have a master's in French philosophy from France. फिर भी मैं दावे के साथ बोल सकता हूँ कि OBC रिजर्वेशन नहीं होता ना मैं यहाँ पे नहीं बैठा होता. There is Maxwell's demon. That Maxwell's demons guarding his entry points and will throw you out in the name of some goddamn merit. तो मैंने देखा है, अनुभव किया है कि बस आप मुझे पसंद नहीं करते क्योंकि मेरा जो क्रिटिक है वो because I am not apologetic, because in the beginning to exist for us, I come from that background, to exist is kind of a crime. और उसका मतलब प्रॉब्लम एक्सप्रेस करना वो भी हमें बहुत केयरफुली एक्सप्रेस करने होते हैं. तो मतलब हर्ट ना हो जाए तो कमा रहे यार. So then slowly gradually French philosophy taught me to be slightly nasty. This is what we call Voltairean bend. Okay, and Voltaire used to say, nastiness is my national institution. So that is my political tool. My close friends know that what I mean by that. Because मैं तुम भी आदत डालो, क्योंकि हमें तो आदत सी हो गई कि कदम कदम पे ह्यूमिलिएशन बर्दाश्त करने की. तुम भी कभी कभार थोड़ा अपमानित होता है, तुम्हें बड़े झटके लगते हैं. आदत डालो भाई, आदत डालो, थोड़ी सी आदत डालो. जस्टिस मतलब एडजस्ट करो लोगों को, और ऊपर से बोलना तो बंद ही कर दो. ऊपर से बोलना तो बिल्कुल बंद कर दो. ठीक है. सो ये जो क्रिटिक है ये डेलिबरेटली वोल्टेरियन स्टाइल में मैंने लिखा है. मैं बहुत गांधीवादी भी तरीके से लिख सकता था, मैंने नहीं लिखा है. देखो मतलब मुझे अभी महाराष्ट्र में इनविटेशन जो आते हैं मैक्सिमम फुले अम्बेडकराइट ग्रुप से आते हैं. ठीक है. उसके बाद गांधीवादियों से भी आते हैं, एनसीपी से भी आते हैं, कांग्रेस से भी आते हैं, डावे मतलब वामपंथियों से भी आते हैं. मैं सबका स्वीकार करता हूँ. खाली मैं बोलता हूँ कि आरएसएस का इनविटेशन नहीं लूंगा मैं. For me, if you ask me, like some people critique, but you were never active in student politics, you were never active, only 2016 onwards you became active. I said, yes, that's true, but I was deeply political. Deeply political because, for me, I have taken my stand every time, and the principle with which I take my stand, that is principle of democratizability. I find that nobody is absolutely democratic because that is the end of history. There is some possibility of democratizability if we have that good faith and some faith in that constitutional framework. So Gandhivad or all this, I'm not doctrinal, that is for sure, but wherever there is possibility of dialogue, possibility of democratizability, ability to democratize that space, I'm ready to go and interact with them. I will not say I'll just go to that section, because they have some different degree of democratizability and I have to interact with them. Otherwise, if I just talk to my constituency, it's my ideological framework, it's like a baker selling the bread to a baker. And it's like echo chamber of which we are often accused.
This is from, I think, a student from IIMC, and the person has named himself, so I'll read out his name, Rajgopal Chaudhary. And he says that, There are lots of student movements. Some of these are led by just a handful of people, and they sometimes are successful but often peter out. There are two students who are still sitting on protest strike in IIMC. And how can students inspire their movement so that it does not die?
Yeah, that's a very good question actually. And in this respect, JNU has played a huge role, and JNU will take some time to evaluate its impact on Indian society. That JNU was quite confined to this space, but when JNU was attacked, it really went to villages, places, and universities. And those universities, like in Maharashtra, I can see that those student movements actually they didn't know about JNU, much about JNU, and now they think that it's very important to protest. This protest was stigmatized in those universities, like many like Marathwada, Bamu University, Savitribai Phule University. The students, that is actually JNU's that contribution. One thing. Second thing, JNU has that intrinsic spirit because the way social sciences are taught here, the way humanities are taught here, the way social, human, cultural facts are analyzed, critiqued, and theorized here. Because it's natural sciences or natural facts, technical facts, to analyze them in a very technocratic manner takes a very different paradigm. But analyzing socio-cultural human facts, it takes different paradigm because these facts have been constituted historically through different processes. And that model, JNU model of teaching social sciences, explains that student after 1 or 2 years वो कुछ सोचना शुरू करता है और बाकी के यूनिवर्सिटीज में जो इंस्ट्रूमेंटल लॉजिक ज़्यादा है, इंस्ट्रूमेंटल लॉजिक ऑफ टीचिंग, like it is useful, it is practical, and that intrinsic idea of education is missing there. Therefore, students, no matter kind of how hard you explain JNU spirit, they fail to understand because in their study or in their classes, this criticality is missing.
Right.
Self-criticality, criticality, that criticality literally it means actually discerning tunnable from unturnable. Criticality is not to dismissing it, but every fact will have something tunnable because every fact is heterogeneous, contradictory, and dynamic, contingent. So one has to analyze it, and social fact is particularly difficult, dynamic and ever-changing. So that criticality is missing in those spaces. So the students they just JNU में होता है हमारे यहाँ पे क्यों नहीं होता है क्योंकि उनका जो ये पूरा एक यहाँ पे एक ambience है JNU is an ambience where students this discussion spaces which are very important dhaba and all these things these spaces are lacking there or just classroom is just kind of a small space in JNU. There are bigger spaces. This space I think these spaces we don't see more and more. If we create these spaces in those universities they will also get into criticality.
So these are related questions, and I think I'll ask them together because it'll just make your way of, your answer more compressed. So one is about from a student who was in FLU between 2009 and 14 when the campus saw a very vibrant rise of Ambedkarite politics, and this is where he had his first fundamental lesson on caste. And he says this continues in JNU. In the last few years, the Ambedkarite student politics has asserted itself not just in opposition to the right wing, but also to the left as well. If you could share your thoughts on this, especially in the context of the last few years and the current political context, that's one question. Then this is a question that has come with 2 question marks next to the first sentence, which means it's obviously raising some very fundamental issues, which is JNU आपको कितना progressive लगता है in terms of caste, 2 question marks, जहाँ OBC reservation 2006 में अप्लाई किया गया जाता है और वही EWS तुरंत लागू किया जाता है. So the economic reason. And this is from Atika, I think. How do you look at left faculty equating politics of BAPSA with ABVP? And this is also a related question. How to stop appropriation of Dalit leaders in parties like Congress and BJP? What's the way forward to capture political power?
And all these questions, is it over?
There are many more, but on a similar vein, I'll read this. Should I read them out?
Yeah, if they more or less are overlapping.
Okay, so, okay. So, do you think it's possible for us to ever have a Hinduism in which will in actuality be equal for all? Should we work to reform the religion or rather denounce it? Since it is inherently Brahmanical, is it even possible to reform a religion that is deeply embedded in graded inequality? This is, I think, this is, so you've mentioned that you've tried to cheat in your class 10th English exam. So, my question is, how do you perceive that if a student cheats in his exams? One, is it his individual failure? Two, or the failure of the teacher? Three, the failure of the entire education system. Four, what you will do if your student tries to cheat in your exam.
I'll answer the first question, the last question first, because it's a hilarious question. I never liked exams myself. I mean, I never liked school actually. तो मैं बहुत बार बोलता हूँ कि I am an error in the system. Error in the system. Either I should be thrown out or I will do something to the system. तो मैं स्टूडेंट्स को तो मैं बोलता हूँ कि मेरा मन चले तो मैं एग्जाम ही ना लूँ. मतलब मैं बोलता हूँ उनको कि you come to my class not because I want you to come to my class. If you feel like coming, you come to my class. That's that much like you can ask my students. And if you find that my teaching is relevant to you in your particular situation, then only you come to my class. Just because you are not coming to my class, I am not going to penalize. क्योंकि मैं खुद नहीं जाता था क्लास में, बोल देता हूँ. मैं खुद बंक करता था, उसकी मैं कीमत भी चुकाई है. लेकिन मैं बोलूँगा कि उसके लिए आप penalize नहीं होंगे. Whatever you know, but just that you should be in good faith and do minimum of what you can do. Just because if you can sit in the library and do far better than what you could have done after attending the classes, I mean, I would respect you. So that is actually my take on it. And now all those questions, the previous questions, if I answer them together, see. OBC reservation, SC, ST and all that. So I'll just small anecdote, 1.5 years, because what's happening in Maharashtra. Before that, till 2016, I was not that much visible because I had decided not to be visible, or rather to see things rather than to be seen. That was my epistemological strategy. But then in 2017 onwards, Bapsa started inviting me. And quite frequently. तो धीरे धीरे मुझे सुना ही पड़ता था, आई वो तो बापसा का टीचर है. मैंने कहा वो इनवाइट कर रहे हैं तो देखो मुझे पिन डाउन कर दिया गया. मतलब आपने तो कभी उसके लायक समझा नहीं मुझे, क्योंकि आप किस तरह से मुझे म्यूट किए हो या इनविजिबलाइज किए हो, और आपके रेगुलर पोस्टर बॉय या पोस्टर पर्सन कौन होते हो, ठीक है आपकी पॉलिटिक्स है, लेकिन यदि बापसा मुझे वो स्पेस दे रही है तो आप मुझे फिर अपमानित कर रहे हो. वो बापसा का टीचर है, बिकॉज बापसा स्टार्टेड इनवाइटिंग. दैट इज वन थिंग. एंड अबाउट दिस SC, ST, OBC, वो तो इट्स लाइक इट्स truism. I mean, they know far better than me, because, and I have spoken about it in my book, that is it a really genuine realization that one is now saying Jai Bhim, because in 2004 I didn't hear that. Were we not enough intelligent at that time, or we became all of a sudden intelligent now, or it is a tactical thing? बहुत खतरनाक शब्द है, tactical thing. So see, for me, if I do not give that latitude, my philosophy is not doctrinal. Because if I pin down you to your point of departure, then I will stand accused of what I am accusing you. If I essentialize you that there is no possibility of dialogue between you and me, then actually I am essentializing you. So for me, my philosophy doesn't allow me that essentialization. There can be critique, harsh critique, but if there is a possibility of democratizability, I am ready for that. So actually I navigate, क्योंकि OBC ये भी बहुत विचित्र स्पेस है, कॉरिडोर वाली स्पेस है. इधर कभी डाउट करता है, उधर कभी करता है. कभी मुझे मतलब हमारे SC मित्रों वो बहुत क्लोज फ्रेंड्स है, लेकिन वो कभी SC क्राउड में भी ले जाते थे, तो मुझे सुनाई पड़ता अपना है क्या, मतलब ये भी मैंने सुना. But for me, like SC/ST concrete crowd came later. My philosophical convictions came prior to that. They started inviting me after listening to me, and I am fully Ambedkarite by my own convictions. I stand in no need of validation of this organization or that organization. I will remain even if I get kind of individual some unpleasant experience, but those experiences, like people अभी मुझे बोलते कि नहीं हमने गोबर खाना इसलिए शुरू किया कि वामपंथी ऐसा करते थे, कोई रीजन हो नहीं सकता. मतलब मैं भी वामपंथी को क्रिटिक करता हूँ, but that cannot justify your joining something that is pernicious to Indian democracy. That cannot be the ground. If you can critique it. So मुझे लगता है कि ये जो नेवल गेजिंग है कुछ लोगों का, मतलब लेफ्ट, मैं तो एक्चुअली जब फ्रांस में रहता हूँ तो मैं अपने आप को लेफ्ट ही समझता हूँ, क्योंकि लेफ्ट होता क्या है, पहले वो भी हम इसलिए मैंने शब्द यूज किया मराठी में, शीघ्र मार्क्सवादी. शीघ्र मतलब बिना पढ़े, बिना समझे, ठीक है, बस अच्छा लगता है, मतलब बिना पढ़े क्योंकि अच्छा लगता है. वो जो गुड कॉन्शियंस सस्ते में खरीदने वाली बात है. और वामपंथियों का नफरत भी वही करते बिना पढ़े. तो मतलब when I did my MPhil in Sheffield, deliberately I selected the courses on Marxism. मैंने कहा कि हमारे यहाँ पे बहुत चलता है. तो मेरा प्रॉब्लम ये है कि it is actually, I keep saying in most of my interventions that most of problems are due to misunderstandings and lack of education and due to our ignorance. So good deal of our problems would be resolved if we are in good faith and give some latitude and little bit generous towards each other. So that is my actually political philosophy. Philosophy is actually the point of arrival that we all agree about, that constitutional framework, there should be just order and all that. लेकिन अभी कैसे ऑपरेट करना है? यदि मैं सीधा मतलब बोला कि ये अप्रोप्रिएट कर रहा है, ये अप्रोप्रिएट कर रहा है, ये अप्रोप्रिएट कर, तो मैं मेरा एक मठ और मठाधीश 2-3 अनुयायी रहेंगे मेरे पास. और दूसरी मैं और एक बात बताता हूँ इससे चलते हुए, ये मुझे बड़ा अजीब सा लगा था. आई विल नॉट नेम that stalwart teacher who was JNUTA president during his student days. When this student agitation was taking place on his eye, तो मैं तब लिखने लगा था. तो I had written that even students from deprived backgrounds, poor backgrounds, I mean students, 40% students from poor and deprived backgrounds will be thrown out of the university. ये था, उनके नीचे उन्होंने comment किया था. टीए के भी वो बहुत प्रेसिडेंट रह चुके कि शरद not only poor students but even students who are from well respected background. मैंने कहा सर poor student भी well respected background से यहाँ होते हैं. और मैंने स्क्रीनशॉट लेके रखा है, किसी को लग रहा है कि मैं कुछ मतलब स्क्रीनशॉट है मेरे पास. लेकिन फिर भी मैंने कहा चलो यार इग्नोरेंस होता है, बट नहीं मानते ना, हम अपना मान लेते हैं और वो अपना मतलब अपराध भी समझते हैं. लेकिन सामने वाला इग्नोरेंस को नॉलेज को कन्वर्ट करके, जैसे अरुण ने कहता था कि प्रोटेक्टेड इग्नोरेंस बहुत बड़ा हथियार है. प्रोटेक्टेड इग्नोरेंस, ये हम मानते नहीं कि इग्नोरेंस है.
So because of time constraints, I'm afraid we are going to have to end this conversation here, but this is just a temporary pause because I think there'll be many other platforms where